Hey,
Are
everybody.
you whistling? Is that some whistling I hear over there?
I was trying to whistle. I'm trying to bring back whistling. It's my new thing.
It's a good idea.
At this time of the season, I'm looking to bring back just about anything to help me out. Mine is more to deal with the struggling depression that I'm in from no longer being in the playoffs in any of my leagues because every one of my players did awful.
I don't know what that feels like.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
It's kind of rude. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I'm sorry. I feel bad.
If your reputation stands the test of time, you'll be number 2 in both leagues.
That's very true.
After this weekend.
I do like to be in second place always, never first. I don't know why. It's just how it is.
I think you have a hard time to doing that this year, though, because you do actually have a pretty solid team in both leagues.
That's true.
It's impressive.
That's true. Well, you shouldn't be too sad, Sean, especially not on this podcast, because I don't know if you know, but this is our second to last podcast, maybe ever. I was thinking about it last night, and I was like, and I'm like, tonight we need to answer the question: will we be back next year?
Oh, I thought you were going to make
question.
some comment about how don't want to do it next year, and then I realized the Mayan calendar. I forgot about that.
Oh yeah,
There's that too. We may not be back next year. We might not even be back for our final podcast because of that.
You ever have that thing happen in a podcast? I don't know if any of you out there have done many podcasts, but that point in a podcast when I feel like you have such a good producer that he pulls out a random thing that you're not even talking about to make it more interesting, like the Mayan calendar, like Lane just did. Because I think you were going into something completely different.
I was.
And now all I can think about is how the world's going to end in 7 hours if it ends at midnight, which I don't think it will.
I'm always striving to keep it real, even when it's not.
Even when it's real,
The Mayan calendar.
real close to the end of the world.
Oh, yeah. But no, I really want to know, are we going to be back next year? And I also have a lot of other questions as well. Are we going to get benched? Are we going to get traded? What if we get traded in the off season?
I'm hoping to get traded.
What if we get...
Wow. I got to call my agent.
Please save all questions for the Q&A section.
And then
I can't speak on any of that right now.
Oh, yeah.
I can't speak
Q&A
on that.
section, please. We at the end of the show, Q&A.
Anyways, we're talking about...
And then we also are going to be free agents. What if we decide to test the podcast market?
Yeah, see if anyone's out there.
What if we get bumped down to the CPL, which is the Canadian Podcast League? Well, that might happen as well. Or maybe we'll just retire and call it good.
Yeah, we might. I mean, I feel
Who knows?
I feel like we got to quit where we're on top of the bottom. There's the bottom tier, and I feel like we're on top of it right now. So
I'm really glad that we decided to do this podcast. I feel like it was a lot of fun. I feel like we had good times with it. I went back and listened because I'm putting together a special treat for the final podcast, and I listened to our first and second, and I was impressed. I thought that they were really bad, and turns out
we were hilarious.
They were pretty good, yeah.
I feel like if you were to jump back, what was it, 17, 18 weeks now since our first ones, you would notice that it just has gotten less homoerotic since then. Because back then, I think it was just initially us talking about what guys in the NFL we thought were hot.
Well, we're trying to be funny back then, and I don't know if it worked, but we were trying. We were definitely trying.
Yeah, and now it kind of just comes to us. It's not usually funny, but it just comes to us. But anyways, in case 5 minutes into the podcast you have no idea what you're listening to, this is Fantasy Top 5. Mm-hmm. We do a fantasy football podcast. Mm-hmm. You can find us on basically everywhere, Twitter, Facebook. We have a website, www.fantasytop5.com. All that is spelled out, no number, just all letters, F-I-V-E. Mm-hmm. And I'm Sean.
And I'm Eric.
Yeah, and we are here to hopefully help you with your fantasy championships coming up. Hopefully you're still in it. We have noticed we've gotten a lot less questions since the playoffs have started. And I think a lot of that is that a lot of people are getting bumped out. And especially with the week last week, if anyone had a solid team, there's a good chance you lost. If you had a team that you had built from random things with injuries and stuff, you probably came out a lot better after last week because a lot of fantasy starters let people down. So, yeah, we've gotten less questions, but if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them up to us. And that's still like we always do throughout the weekend. If you have questions about Saturday's game or Sunday's games, put them up whenever you want.
Yeah, no, I usually do the same thing. As soon as I lose, I completely stop listening to any podcasts about fantasy football. I stop watching football. I kind of do the same thing you do. I go into a deep depression.
Yeah, I actually have kept listening at this point because it's a lot easier to steal information from people if you're listening. You can re-throw it out there and make it sound like your own in your own words and make it sound like you came up with it.
Oh, that's a good point.
No, but really, yeah, we're Fantasy Top 5.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and kick this thing off right with our newses and bruises, which is our top 5 news stories and our top 5 injury reports. And going back to what I talked about earlier with the question is, and I did the same thing on our last podcast as well, players that will be back. And the number one news story is Mark Sanchez gets benched for Greg McElroy.
The Mac Attack is back. Yes.
Has that been used?
I don't know.
I don't know, but I love it.
TM.
Trademarked right now. And everyone's kind of wondering not only that, but is he going to be back next year? And there's also been a source that Tebow won't be back next year as well. So apparently Greg McElroy is the quarterback going forward based off of a half a game performance.
Yeah, that's the thing is that if there's one thing you can count on in the NFL, it is Tebow talk. Because it's already, since they decided to go with McElroy, it's only been a couple days out since that news was released. And already they're throwing out, oh, Tebow going to go here? Is Tebow going to go here? It's like, he's not a good quarterback. There's a reason they're not using him, and they're using Sanchez over him. And there's a reason McElroy is playing over him. Like, he's not a good quarterback. Like, and don't get me wrong, I don't know if he'll start somewhere next year, but he'll be on a team. I don't think it'll be the Jets. A lot of people have talked about him going to the Canadian League, but I don't.
Yeah, that's where I got
know.
that from.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's where I pulled out the Canadian Podcast League. Was from the Tebow talk.
Oh, I like it.
But yeah, they've also talked about Michael Vick going to the Jets next year. And that's the thing. Around this point, people just start talking about everything. You can pretty much find a news story for anybody going anywhere at any time.
Ever.
And so it's I don't know. It's kind of crazy. Sanchez, I don't think is very
Sanchez
good.
is. I know people don't like to talk about him because he's not Tebow, but I still think Sanchez will start somewhere next year. I think the hard thing now is that the Jets have him in such a big contract that's really hard to get rid of him. And if they get rid of him, they take like an $8 million hit or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's if they do it soon. If they wait very much longer, I think it goes up to a $10 or $12 million thing. So it's one of those things that's like, can we get enough for him to make up for the hit we're going to take? And that's the thing is if they keep him and they put him on the bench, I think that would be really weird. I don't know.
It would. And I think the Tebow situation, I think they should get rid of him. I think it's just a lot of craziness. Oh, also Tebow broke up with his girlfriend this week as well. So there's always that.
That is weird. I knew he looked depressed, and I thought it was about not being able to start, but it turns out it's about the girlfriend.
Maybe a little bit of both.
I wonder if they broke up because of. That seems like a very high school relationship. Since like obviously they're not doing a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're reading scriptures together and such. Like I don't know. It doesn't seem like there'd be a lot of drama. Neither one of them sleep with people, so they wouldn't be sleeping around or anything like that. So I don't know.
So is this.
Maybe Sanchez is calling her on the DL, trying to get back at Tebow. Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
So our number 2 is Greg Jennings. Apparently he said that the writing is on the wall as to whether he'll be back in Green Bay next year. Apparently there are a lack of contract talks there in Green Bay. Also, he does not like the idea of the franchise tag being used on him as well.
Oh, well, here's the thing is I feel like a person like Greg Jennings, I know he wants to be used, and I think he will be used if he can stay healthy there. But you can't start the I don't like the idea of a franchise tag thing because he's getting older. Mm-hmm. He's proven this year that he's starting to get quite injury prone. So it's one of those things where it's like they're going to use the franchise tag, I feel like. I don't think
I do too.
Either that or they're not going to give him any real money because they want to see if he's going to stay healthy. I think a lot of other teams would give him a decent amount of money, but I don't think a lot of teams have Cobb and have Jordy Nelson and have a guy that I've never really been impressed with on the full like athletic side, but James Jones managed to be that guy who can be standing somewhere and catch a ball. and have a touchdown from Aaron Rodgers whenever Aaron Rodgers wants him to. He's like, there's that guy that doesn't seem very fast or very athletic. I'm just going to throw it to him because he's in the end zone and no one's covering him. But I think a lot of things are going to change in Green Bay. Like, I think Finley's going to be gone. I do think Jennings is going to be gone because it opens up a little bit. I think they're wanting to do even more to their defensive side. And I also think mainly if there is, and there is going to be, but like there's Steven Jackson, D'Angelo, Williams. I don't know if you're going to go into these guys, but there's lots of guys that are going to be on the market, and they need a running back. Like, they got nothing on the running back side of the ball there. So I think he ends up being gone.
No, I wasn't. I went through these two just because there were actual quotes and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I think that could be a lot as well. They need a running back, although they did do pretty well with Cedric Benson in the beginning of the year, if he comes back. So my number 3 is apparently tomorrow's the appeal of cornerback, the Seahawks corner, Richard Sherman. So we'll kind of see what that does for any fantasy owners who own the Seattle defense. And also, apparently Redskins corner D'Angelo Hall says he was falsely accused of threatening to kill an official. So a little bit of cornerback news there for you, with two different cornerbacks that may probably most likely get suspended towards at some point this. Well, Richard Sherman,
he seems pretty confident that he's going to be fine. I don't know if that's just... He seems pretty confident about just about everything. But this is one of those things that... The main reason that I think that he's not going to get... that he's not going to win the appeal is that it was him and the other cornerback. And the other cornerback's like, I'm going to take the suspension now, so I'm here for the playoffs. And Sherman's like, no, I think I can beat it. And him taking it makes me think that they were doing something... But who knows? I hope he passes because not passes but wins it, because I don't want to see the Seahawks team that's doing awesome right now be compromised at the end of the season. Like, I don't want their defense to be screwed and then not have a chance in the playoffs because two of their main players will. Like, I think there's 2 more weeks. I think they will make it to the playoffs, but depending on where they're at, like, it'll be the one cornerback will be back at the very first game of the playoffs. But if he gets...
So they could both be out next week, which is
and then the week after. But then they would have to be... They'd have to basically, I think, make it to the NFC Championship game for him to play, for Sherman to play again.
Yeah.
So no one wants that.
Yeah, so it's quite crazy.
By no one, I mean me. I don't know how everyone else feels about it, really, but I don't want that. So...
Well, and probably, fantasy for this week, at least for Seattle defense owners. My number 4 is players that are placed on IR. I mean, there's enough here that I could throw them down into the bruises, but since it's so big, I decided to make a news story for it. Michael Bush, placed on IR. Stephen Hill of the Jets. Malcolm Floyd. And I think we talked about Ryan Matthews last week. And then also Daniel Thomas and Charles Clay for the Miami Dolphins. So they're tight end and backup running back. So a lot of players out for the season this week.
Yeah, there's a ton of people that have been placed on IR at this point. Like, it's insane how many.
Yeah, I almost thought about for our last podcast just doing a whole segment on just players that were injured. But then I decided it would take a full hour. So yeah. Because that's the football.
Malcolm Floyd is probably the only one that really affects your fantasy team that much. Like, I think the other guys are maybe okay, but he's the only big name guy.
Yeah, maybe in a deep league. And my number 5, which I always try to make a ridiculous news story, is about Michael Vick. He's number 3. He's the number 3 quarterback on the depth chart at this point. Apparently, he's running the scout team against the Washington Redskins. So in practice, he's been trying to mimic RG3, which is kind of funny because they're similar players. And apparently, Vic was quoted saying that RG3 is quite a bit younger and more agile than he is, which I thought was kind of funny as well.
Well, it's definitely true at this point. And I think Michael Vick also is at that point where it's that thing, like, fast forward 7 years down the road, I'm pretty sure RG3 will have a Super Bowl win at that point. But I'm pretty sure Andrew Luck will be playing still at the same level, and RG3 will be constantly getting hurt. Because I think RG3 is going to be great. I think he's going to continue to be great. But I think he's going to start to have injury problems because it's one of those things where when you're that type of quarterback, you just run into that.
Yep. So we'll move over to our bruises. Number 1 is LaShawn McCoy is probable and will start against the Redskins. It's been stated. So the Bryce Brown era is over. It was only 4 games, but
I think they said,
done.
Yeah, I think they said he's going to split the load with him. But
yeah, he'll still be the backup. So it's
Yeah.
not that he's not just going to, but
I wanted them to be like, McCoy is going to get a huge amount of work, which I think they're saying he's going to split the load, and I think McCoy is definitely a lot better play this week. But I just wish they were saying, yeah, we're going to play it like we were still in the playoff hunt, just beat that, like let McCoy run it like crazy.
yeah, for fantasy owners, I don't know what you would do because you probably it's kind of a little scary playing him in this important of a game. But
And I still like McCoy more in this than I did in the regular season because I think they were trying to build an offense around Michael Vick that was like, we're going to have a huge play every single play. And then now I think they went to a simple play calling system, which really favors the run.
yeah, and the Redskins are a good matchup, and it was a concussion, and he's been out for enough time that I think he's probably back to being perfectly healthy again.
As much as concussions hurt, and it takes you out for a little while, it's not your knees, it's not something
where you're
on your
trying
body.
to work your
When
body
you're
back
back
into shape. Yeah,
Yeah, when you're back, you're back. You're not like playing on it even though your ankle's still bad or even though your knee's still messed up. Like when you're back, you're back.
Yeah, and it's a good matchup with the Redskins. So,
Redskins have actually got not a terrible run defense. They got a bad pass defense, but still, I think McCoy, like we've talked about, he is a special guy, and I think the whole thing this year has been they had a bad offense set up for him.
oh yeah, their run defense is actually pretty good. My number 2 is Jordy Nilsson. Did not practice yesterday, so keep an eye on him if you'd like to play him. Des Bryant.
Sorry, you shouldn't have him on your team, and I don't think you should have Jordy Nelson on your team. I had him, I dropped him. He's injury prone. I think they're gonna. I'd be surprised if he plays before the playoffs. If any, I would see him maybe getting a couple plays next week just to keep him in game shape. But he's been injury prone, and he's that guy who when they went on their Super Bowl run, he was the guy. Like he stepped up, and so I think they want that player back for their playoff run. So I think, and he's hurt himself twice this year. He's missed multiple games on multiple occasions. So I think they're going to get him 100% healthy
before bringing him back.
Yeah, that's my opinion. I don't know if that's what they'll really do, but
I agree. I wouldn't play him if you own him. My number 3 is Des Bryant, who is probable and looks like he will play. So he's just owning it, even with his broken finger.
Good matchup this week too, against the Saints. I think they will still kind of favor Austin because they don't want Des to get more hurt. But at the same time, Romo proved last week he's not afraid to go to Bryant in the end zone, and Bryant proved that he's not afraid to step up and be that guy. And he got a touchdown last week, and he really helped him win. And I did see him drop a couple of catches that he may have caught regularly, but still, Des Bryant's a guy that even 80% is still 20% better than most players you're going to have on your team. So, yeah.
That's true. My number 4 is Ahmad Bradshaw, who missed practice yesterday. He's questionable. They want him back. David Wilson didn't have the best game, although I don't feel like that was entirely his fault.
They were down the whole time, so yeah.
Yeah, and Eli just was ridiculously awful. So I think they want him back, but yeah, I don't think it was all David Wilson's fault. And my number 5 is RG3, who looked good in practice. Is questionable, but looks like he will play unless they just want to be safe and just wait one more week just to kind of see. But because they may be able to beat the Eagles with Cousins. So
yeah, and at the same time, if he comes back, he is huge for teams. He's the fifth highest score total in fantasy points. And if you're in the fantasy playoffs and if you manage to win with Cousins or whoever got to back him up, he's a huge part of your team, obviously. So you're going to want him to play this week. So hopefully he gets out there. But even if he doesn't, there's some good matchups with guys that you wouldn't normally start this week. So you can still make a good play. So yeah, but it would be great to have him back, and also just to see him kick some ass on the Eagles, basically.
That's true. So there it is.
All right, no, that's all your guys. All right, here and now we're gonna move over to my top 5 drop-offs and bounce backs. The number 1 and number 2 drop-offs are kind of, it's not combined, but it's the same game, and it's 2 guys that you would have been playing going into this game normally. They're 2 guys that have stepped up huge in the second half of the season. And those 2 are Russell Wilson and Colin Kaepernick, who are 2 great young quarterbacks, both similar style running backs. Both have a big arm, both run it like crazy. Both have looked amazing the last few weeks. Both play on two teams that have, in my opinion, the number 1 and number 2 defense in the league spots. And so, that being the case, I think both of them will drop down on their numbers this week, which is still kind of bold because they've both played well even against good teams. But I think this matchup will be just crazy. I think it might be high scoring, but I think there's going to be a lot of mistakes. I think there's going to be a lot of turnovers and a lot of defense. And
I can see that.
Yeah, and Russell, when it comes to Russell Wilson, he's scored more than 17 points in all but one game since week 8. And so, yeah, he's just been awesome, and he's got the Seahawks to where they're at. Their defense has been great, but he also has stepped up. And like a few weeks ago against the Bears, we all saw that he can lead them to game-winning drives and in big drives in overtime. But against the 49ers, I think he's going to struggle, like I said. So I wouldn't count on him to win you the fantasy championship, basically. And then Colin Kaepernick, who definitely looks like he's the future of the 49ers, especially after his week last week. He's shown that he can make the big plays with his athletic ability that Alex Smith just couldn't. So it looks like he's going to be the guy going forward. And he hasn't had less than 15 fantasy points in any game since he became the starter. So he also has been very solid. But I also don't think he's went to a place and played a team that has a better advantage than the Seahawks because they have the 12th man there in Seattle. And so I think him going into the hardest stadium, any football fan has heard football players talk about it. It's the hardest stadium to play in the NFL. We saw Breeze go in there in the playoffs a couple of years ago and lose when the Seahawks were in the wild card position. And so, yeah, I think you want to go in. I think you want to. I guess the Saints were in the wild card position because they went to Seattle. Anyways.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is
so
that what it was?
Yeah. Because they won their division.
Oh, yeah.
It was that time that it was under 500.
And they won their division.
All right. And then...
but, yeah, it'll definitely be a crazy game, especially with how good Seattle's been the last 2 weeks and how good the defense has been. And, yeah, scoring 50 points a game the last 2 weeks. It'll be crazy to see this matchup.
Yeah, and I know this is kind of like hitting the same topic time and time again with me and my feelings towards stuff. But the 49ers defense have also stepped up to a different level last week. Like we saw what they did to the Patriots. Yes, Brady had good numbers, but everyone saw they played man in the beginning of the game. They completely shut down the team. Then once they got up big, they played zone, they played zone, they played zone. Brady is a good quarterback, so yes, he was able to take them apart that way. But once they got close again, the 49ers switched back to man on those last 2 drives and completely shut them down again. So I think the 49ers defense can go in there and hold the Seahawks offense to not getting a lot of points. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good game, but I think it's going to be a defensive game. I think both those guys are guys that aren't going to have the huge games they've had the last couple weeks. I wouldn't look for 20-plus point games from either one of them. I probably wouldn't even look for 15-plus. I think they're both going to drop off significantly.
Nice.
All right, and then my third drop-off of the week is James Jones, who right now is a top 20 fantasy wide receiver, but he's only had 6 games with over 10 fantasy points, and there's a reason for this, and that reason is that he is ridiculously inconsistent.
Yes, he is.
But he is also a guy that can have games like he had last week where he catches 3 touchdown passes off of just 5 catches. So more than half of his catches last week were touchdowns, and he only had 60 yards. It's just that thing that every few games, Aaron Rodgers is like, "Oh yeah, James Jones, I forgot he was on the team,"
and then just throws
him
it
touchdowns.
to him like every.
Yeah, because it's not even that he throws it to him at that high of a rate. It's just that he's like, "Oh, we have a third receiver in this case, but usually a fourth receiver." And he'll throw him a touchdown. And that's the thing is, Jordy, I don't think is going to play. So he may have an okay game, but I just don't think it's likely that he will give you the 24 points he got in this game. It's one of those things that, though, that if you take a chance, he could get you the 0 he got you in Week 12. Or, yeah, he can also get you 20 plus like he got you last week. But I would say if there's anything consistent you have on your team, at this point in the season, you want to stick with that. But I don't know, do what you want. But I don't think James Jones is going to repeat. He never usually has huge games back to back.
Yeah, I wouldn't play him.
Yeah, so that's that. And then my fourth guy on the drop-offs is a guy we kind of talked about a little bit on Monday's podcast, and that's Beanie Wells, who is another guy who is really inconsistent. He's played 7 games this season because he's been injured for a bit of it, and he has 55.5 fantasy points. And 41.5 of those fantasy points came on 2 games. So basically he's had 2 ridiculously huge games and 2 awful games. And really, that's not even 30 points in 2 games. So it's still not even like the hugest games. He's had 2 great games, not awesome, great games, and then 5 terrible games. So really, just don't put all your fantasy hopes on Beanie Wells.
And he has a really tough matchup as well.
Yeah, he does have a very solid matchup going up against the Bears,
yeah.
And the Bears are looking to save their reputation. They're looking to not look like a complete joke because of how they started the season and how they're ending it. And they're also looking to hopefully keep their fantasy. Yeah, they're hoping to save their fantasy teams. No, they're hoping to keep their real life playoff hopes alive. Urlacher's out there is like, I can't believe the crowd was booing my fantasy team. No, I don't know.
It's hilarious.
But yeah,
I love it. I wouldn't have even caught it. It's the other weird thing.
Oh, I was talking about Cutler's over there. He's like, I don't know if I should play Marshall this week. We're going up against a tough defense. No, but yeah, don't play Beanie Wells. He's not a guy you want to replace one of your studs who did bad last week for. Like, it's just not worth taking the chance. Like, he's a mirage. That's what Beanie Wells is. It's my best word that I think describes him.
I agree.
Yeah, so that's my opinion on him. And this 5th one was hard for me because I like the guy. I think he's finally gotten pretty consistent. And
don't say it. Don't say it.
I'm sorry, Eric, but it's
do it. Don't
it's
do it.
Steven Jackson.
Oh, don't do it.
Who has had?
You said it.
I know it hurt you.
I you said that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is
Take it back.
I'm not talking about how great he's been though. Really quick, in the last 5 games, he's had 395 yards rushing, 156 yards receiving.
That's quite a bit.
And he's had a touchdown, which really
that's pretty good.
He should be getting. In 5 games, he should probably have 2 or 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, he's probably have more than that.
Yeah, but he's looked good. He's a lot of why you made it to the playoffs and then had won the first playoff game. He had an awesome game for you last week.
That's true. You should start him. Let's move on. I'm just kidding.
But anyways, I think even though he's been more consistent lately, I think he's going to struggle this week against the Buccaneers. I believe the Buccaneers have let's see, what do they have? They have
a really good run defense.
Yeah, they have a very good run defense. It's actually only in the top 10. They've had a little bit more trouble lately, but I still think he's going to have a tough game against them. And also
12, yeah, they're the 12th. They give up the 12th least.
Yeah, and it's also I think they have a good enough run defense that they're going to stop him. He's just a power running back. He doesn't have a lot of moves, so I don't think they're going to have that much trouble stopping him. And also, I think in this game, with how bad their pass defense is, I think they're just going to focus on him, and they're going to make Bradford beat him through the air. And I do think I think this will be a good game. I think Bradford will have a good game, but I don't think Steven Jackson is going to get. Maybe he gets 10 points, but I don't think he gets much more than that.
Bradford will definitely be Bradford this game.
He will indeed be Bradford. All right, and then moving over to my bounce backs.
Jackson will be relaxing. I don't know if that.
I don't think he'll be relaxed. I think he'll still be playing in the game. I think he'll just be struggling a little bit. He's just sitting over there. He's like, "You got this, right, Bradford? I'm gonna chill."
You over there being Radford? I'm over here relaxing.
Gosh dang it! All right, but yeah, moving over to my bounce backs. And Eric will love this because he has this guy and he thinks he's great and awesome and cute and stuff. And that is Stephen Ridley.
And awesome and cute and stuff.
That's how you describe him. Whenever I talk to you, you're like, you know that guy on my team? I'm like, which guy? He's like, the one that's great and awesome and cute and stuff. I'm like, oh, Stephen Ridley. And you're like, yeah.
That's the guy.
Yeah.
He actually is kind of he's got a soft face to him.
Yeah. And it's back. But anyways, Stephen Ridley only had 29 yards on 9 carries, and he also lost a fumble in the game against the 49ers. But like we talked about, 49ers, second best defense against the run, and they were also playing in bad weather. So Eric's just looking up pictures of Ridley now. With
his shirt off.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a shirt. I didn't type in with his shirt off. I just typed his name.
It just so happened that he got lucky. But anyways, this week he will be going up against a defense that is a lot worse. In fact, the worst defense in the league against the run in Jacksonville, and he'll also be dealing with a lot of sunshine because he's in Jacksonville. So it's not gonna be a overcast day where it's all rainy and snowy like it was. Yeah, so he's going to have a sunshiny game on the field, and I think he gets a lot of points against a terrible defense.
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing. As much as he fumbled and he didn't really get played a lot, and as much as Belichick's kind of weird, I feel like you still give him the ball, and when he does pretty well, because he's going to, you keep giving him the ball. And Woodhead, he'll get the ball a few times, but I think as the game plays on, I think the same thing. I think Ridley will start to do really well.
Yeah, and Ridley's been great this season.
Except for last game, and I benched him. So
yeah, and I told you that last week, so listen to me again. I know my Ridley. My Ridley, awkward. But all right, second bounce back of the week is a man I like to call Jamal Charles because that's his name. And he had a terrible game against the Raiders. His second terrible game against the Raiders this season. I don't know if it's because the Raiders figured him out. I don't know if it's because his coach is terrible. But he only had 28 total yards, and he basically came out and
I think it's because he's scared.
Scared of the Raiders.
Yep.
It would make sense. They obviously know how to stop him because on his carries he really didn't get a lot of yards at all. But
maybe they threatened him.
That's the way. Jump the threaten. I like it. Keep that reputation of the Raiders down there. But basically this week he's going up against the Colts, who don't have a particularly great run defense. And now that Dwayne Bowe is out on IR, which I think he was out last week too, but he is out for sure on IR. And Quinn is banged up. I think he's going to play, but he's dealing with a rib injury. So I think the Chiefs don't really have a choice but to place a pretty big workload on Charles. So I think he will have a very nice game. And, yeah, it's one of those things that's like, this is kind of just to encourage you. Don't just bench your studs because they had a bad game, especially if you still made it to the championship round. You don't want to be like, bench this guy out of spite and then lose because you didn't play one of your guys that got you there. Like, you got to roll with them. And, that's basically it. Jamal Charles is solid 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. So I would play him. And then the third bounce back of the week. It's another Patriots guy, which I feel kind of weird about. The Patriots did awful last week, and if you made it, you probably have a Patriots guy on your team because they score so many points. And then it was Wes Welker, who had a poor game last week, but that's also he was going up against a great defense, and it was a defense that, at least from me watching the game, it looked like they were focusing on stopping the ball from getting to Welker, which is why Lloyd got so many looks.
Yeah, he did.
And I think in the case of that, they just are like, we know who Brady's favorite target is. We're going to make him go somewhere else, and they shut Welker down. And the Jaguars, I don't think, have the ability to shut anyone down. I think they do actually have a pretty okay defense against the pass. It's kind of middle, isn't it? Yeah, which is a lot better than a lot of teams though, but a lot worse than a lot of teams too, I guess. So, But I just don't think they have that shutdown defense the 49ers have. So I would keep him in your lineup. And I think he'll be right back to getting 10-plus targets from Brady in this game like he always has been.
Hopefully Lloyd gets none.
Yeah. Lloyd. The guy who doesn't even try to play until the very last couple weeks of the season.
And I hope he gets none because I have him, and I'm not going to play him. But I'm playing against someone that's going to play him.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
Heard that. I don't know why I said that. But yeah, Wes Welker's a for sure start. And then my fourth bounce back of the week is a guy that you might have because you had some quarterback issues, or maybe you don't want to deal with trying to hope that Eli Manning or Flacco bounces back, and that is Nick Foles, who had a poor game last week against the Bengals, but they have a very good pass defense. And then 2 weeks ago, he had an awesome game against the Buccaneers, and they have a terrible pass defense. So this week against the team that's second worst next to the Buccaneers in pass defense, the Redskins, he will be playing. Are they not second? Oh, the second board. Yeah. Anyways, and I think it's just that thing. When he plays bad defenses, he's good enough, and he has the ability to have good games against them. And then when he plays tough defenses, he's going to struggle. He's only been playing a few games. So I think he bounces back. I think if you're looking for a guy, Foles isn't a bad guy to pick up. So if you need him, give him a shot. If not, which you probably have a better quarterback if you made it to the championship round, but maybe not. Maybe you were rolling with Vic that whole time and then managed to just pull it through with someone else. Don't be afraid to bounce back to him.
Nice, yeah.
And then my fifth bounce back of the week is Jimmy Graham, who hasn't had a double-digit game since Week 10 against the Falcons. But this week he will be going up against the Cowboys, who the Cowboys are very good against wide receivers because of their two new cornerbacks that they got in the offseason. And so I think they will shut down the receivers, and I think Breeze will have to go to Jimmy Graham in this game. And it's one of those things that Graham hasn't had that bad of games. Like, he never is just like, I'm not going to catch a ball because he's still Jimmy Graham. But
he hasn't, he's not been great.
Yeah, he's like, well, Gronk's out. I don't really have to worry about people showing me up anymore, so I'm just going to hang out. But yeah, I think he bounces back in this game, and I think you'd be crazy to bench him. Like, maybe take a chance if you have, like, Heath Miller. Witten's been pretty consistent, and he's also playing in that game against a good matchup. But not a whole lot of guys I start over him. Maybe take a chance with Aaron Hernandez. But as much as I said I was up on a couple of Patriots guys this week, I don't think they're going to have to score. Like, they do like to keep scoring, but I don't think they're going to have to score 40 points to beat the Jaguars.
And it's hard to sit Jimmy Graham.
Yeah. So if you have Jimmy Graham, you probably didn't bother to get a backup that was worth anything.
Yeah.
So there's very few guys you start over him. So I think Jimmy Graham's a solid play this week. So just keep him in your starting lineup.
Nice. All right, so we will move over to our startups, sit-downs, and in a pinch. I decided to do something even different this time because I kind of like how you were with the Nick Foles thing. It's like I've been doing an in a pinch and then a really in a pinch because we've hit the playoffs. But at this point, you're in the finals. So rather than doing a really in a pinch, I decided to do a sit-down and a probably should sit down. So I kind of added that one down there. And added a fourth one in this time as well. So
I like it. I like it.
Switching it up a little bit. Makes it fun. My number one startup of the week is Tony Romo versus the New Orleans Saints. He's averaging over 22 points the last 4 weeks, which is not bad. And has a really nice matchup against the Redskins, who are not very good.
And he's really stepped up and went away from throwing all the picks he was throwing. I think him coming into a groove with Dez Bryant and showing that that's his number one guy has kind of put everyone else in their place. And I think they know now that what Romo is going to do. And I think he's just found his groove. And, yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think Romo's a solid start this week.
Yeah, and like you said, the Redskins are not very good against the pass. So Tony Romo, if you have him, Definitely start him. He's my number 1. My number 2 running back is DeMarco Murray, also against the Saints as well. He's been great since he returned, and has a very nice matchup.
He hasn't looked great doing it, but he's been consistent.
Who's playing who?
The Saints are playing.
Oh, I'm all sorts of confused.
Yeah, the Saints are playing the Cowboys. You're right.
I said Redskins.
Oh,
there we go. I put Saints there and Redskins there.
Maybe you're thinking because the Cowboys play the Redskins next week is their final game.
Yeah, that might be what it is.
Maybe I'm bailing you out. Who knows?
But either way, yeah, Tony Romo and DeMarco Murray both play the Saints. Yeah, I put New Orleans right there. Anyway, both of them are really good starts. So if you have either of those two guys, go ahead and play him. My number 3 is Cecil Shorts. If you have him, you have to play him. And I feel like if you're questioning it, like so many people seem to for weeks now, don't anymore. Like, I'm happy to start him. I throw him into my lineup and I smile. I throw him in, I'm like, ooh, that looks good there.
Like, oh, I like the way that looks.
I really do. You know how you look at your fantasy team and you like look at and sometimes you even just look at the wide receivers. You're like, oh, that looks good. And then you look down the running backs. You're like, oh, my team is awful. So you have to look back up at your wide receivers again. You ever do that? Just sit and admire your team from top to bottom?
On occasion.
From head to toe?
A fun fact for you.
Just check it out.
With Cecil Shorts. He is right now in the number 17 spot with top fantasy wide receivers right now. And that's in standard league, so he's probably a little bit lower in a PPR league because he doesn't always catch a lot of passes, but he does catch the long ball. And that's the thing is, you have to think about it. You didn't know about Cecil Shorts coming into the season, but you did know about Mike Wallace. You knew about Stevie Johnson. You knew about Lance Moore. You knew about Miles Austin. You knew about Torrey Smith. You knew about all these guys that people are really high on. He's above all those guys. And basically, you don't sit a top 20 receiver. Like, you hope that you have that guy on your team. You're probably able to get him late. And when you had to play him, he was probably one of the guys that got you there. So
he might even still be available. And when I was looking, I think only like 30% of people are starting him. I'm like, what is wrong with you people?
Yeah.
So start him. He's my number 1. I put him in here mainly because I just want to tell anyone who owns him to play him. My number 4 is Rob Gronkowski. I mainly put him in here because it really just feels nice to have an actual tight end on the list. It's been a while since I've been able to put someone in here with confidence, and it's not even that confident. There's a good chance he does not play. But I also wanted to do this for the same exact reason. If he's back, even if it seems like, I don't know, because there's a good chance they're not going to play him.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's back, you got to play him. It's Tom Brady. He's going to throw him the ball at least once, and Gronk will just be Gronk and score a touchdown with it.
That is what he does.
With how awful tight ends have been, I feel like there's no reason not to play him if he actually is going to play. So it's kind of a scary move, but
if he's back, yeah, like you're saying, if he's back, I feel like you have to play him. Like, it's just one of those things. Yeah, you have to. But he's the Gronkinator. I don't know. Like,
that's true.
I think they're dumb if they force him back this quick. But Belichick has never, as much as he's a genius, he has never taken into into account that players are human and they can get hurt. And when you force them back from injuries, they can get hurt more. So who knows what the hell he'll do?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Yeah, just look, Cecil Shorts, 39% starting. So you have like Calvin Johnson at 90 and all these other players. Pierre Garçon's at 60. And 39% with Cecil Shorts. Play him already. My number 5 is Atlanta's defense, which kind of should go down more in a pinch, but I didn't want to say someone obvious. The Lions are giving up the 5th most points to defenses because their offense has just looked awful. And Atlanta's been pretty good this year, so if you need someone, I would go ahead and play him. In a pinch, yeah, we'll kind of do this a little bit backwards today, I guess. I didn't really think this out very well. Is Sam Bradford versus Tampa Bay. Had a huge game last week. And going up against a defense that gives the most fantasy points to quarterbacks, Sam Bradford should be a really good in a pinch.
I was going to put him in my bounce backs, but then I was like,
well,
you can't really put him in a bounce back when he had a great game the game before. So, yeah, I agree with you on Sam Bradford.
Yes. My number 2 is Darren McFadden, who I think also will be really, really good. This is probably more of a not in a pinch, but the Panthers gave him up close to 20 points, and he's been good in his return. The reason I put him here is because it's still kind of he hasn't had the greatest year really.
Yeah, he's been hurt a lot of it, and he hasn't had that great of games, but he had a good game last week and a good game the week before, and the Panthers don't have a good run defense, so yeah, I would think that you would want to play him. And they also, I think the Raiders are playing him to see what they do with him in the offseason. So I think he also knows that, and I think for one, if he wants to stay with the Raiders, he wants to do good, and two, if he wants to go somewhere else, he wants to do good, kind of like show everyone else what he can do. So I think he has a good game. Yeah,
I could have went a little bit more iffy on that one. But my number 3 is Danny Amendola.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. Had a great week last week. He's been injury prone, but that's really the only bad thing you can say. It's not like he's put up bad games.
He assaults old people on occasion.
He does do that. He does. But he made up for it.
Yeah, by giving it to someone that wasn't the old person.
That's true. But yeah, when he plays, he's great. When he doesn't, he's injured.
If you're in a PPR league and you do not play him, you're an idiot. Like he catches 5 or more balls every game, and Bradford loves him. And it's that thing. It was proven. He was back last week. We talked about this, I think, sometime last week before the game. When he's on the field, Bradford is a better quarterback. That's all there is to it. Like, he helps him so much. He's the Wes Welker to the Brady, but on a much smaller scale. But that's what I think of every time. I'm like, Bradford's a quarterback who is a pocket quarterback.
That's as good as Brady.
That's as good as Brady. No, but
if not better most of the time.
Yeah, and he's just working with guys off the street. You don't even know any of these guys. No, I don't know.
My number 4 is Greg Olsen versus the Oakland Raiders. He's had double-digit fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games, and has a really good matchup. If Gronk isn't back, this is the guy that I'm playing in his place because I had Gronk and nobody else. So it's been a tight end catastrophe there.
It's been a tight end carousel. He just keeps spinning them around, putting a new one in, taking them off, putting a new one in. But yeah, Greg Olsen's solid. Here's a quick story though. It's hard to know what to do with guys when they're playing the Raiders because the Raiders, if you know the Raiders, like I know the Raiders, they've had a terrible defense this year, but they also have had an awesome defense, like in 3 or 4 games this year. Like so. Ask people about the week they played the Broncos 2 weeks ago or whatever. People started everyone against them, and then they shut down almost the whole offense besides no Sean Moreno. And then last week they did very well against the Chiefs again, and then they did awesome against the Falcons at the close to the beginning of the season. I do think the Panthers. They're playing in Carolina. I think the Panthers, most of their players will have a solid game that you would be planning on starting. But it's just something to think about. Like, don't be surprised if they randomly come out there and hold Cam Newton to doing nothing and stuff like that because they're weird like that.
Yeah.
They pick and choose when they want to perform.
Not.
Yeah,
I need Cam Newton to have a big game. So,
yeah.
But it is kind of crazy. Carolina's kind of been the same way, weirdly good and weirdly bad.
Well, I remember in the beginning of the season we were talking about how awful Carolina's defense was, and then they're like, how dare they? And they've been awesome.
Yeah, that'll be a crazy game. My number 5 is Indianapolis versus Kansas City. Like I've said every year. Not every year. This year. Defenses against the Chiefs this year put up points, most always. So now we'll move over to our sits and our probably sits. My number 1 sit is Jay Cutler versus Arizona. He's been horribly inconsistent.
It's a good call.
Has a really bad matchup against the Cardinals. If you had him, this may be someone you were maybe thinking about playing, maybe in a quarterback 2 slot or something like that, because he hasn't been great, but I would not do it. My number 2 is Adrian Peterson versus Houston.
How dare you?
I'm actually completely kidding. It's actually Bryce Brown versus Washington. there's no way you sit Adrian Peterson. I wanted to put that in there.
Oh.
It didn't quite work out as well as I thought, but you don't sit Adrian Peterson is what I was trying to get at here. But you sit Bryce Brown.
Adrian Peterson's got a record to get, and he's going to get it.
Yeah, you do not sit Adrian Peterson, even though he's going up against the toughest defense. I went to go look when I was looking up all this, and I found that he was going up against the toughest defense. Oh, I got to write that down. I'm like, no. Anyway, my number 3 is Denario Alexander versus the Jets. The Jets are actually really, really good against wide receivers, allowing the second least points, and he's been kind of off lately. Even with the injury to Malcolm Floyd, I still would not play him in such an important game. My number 4 is Vernon Davis versus Seattle. They're giving up the least points to tight ends, and Vernon Davis has been absolutely brutally awful.
Terrible.
And my number 5 is the Ravens D against the Giants. The Ravens have been really, really bad, and the Giants are allowing the 5th least points to opposing defenses. And now for my probably sits. These are people that you maybe wanted to play, and maybe you should play, but you should probably sit them. My number 1 is Andy Dalton. Has been really bad the past few weeks, and has already played the Steelers once this year and had 7 points. It was in week 7, and did not have a very good game. If you have Andy Dalton, I would not play him if you would like to win. My number 2 is Beanie Wells versus Chicago. Had a huge week last week. Do not trust him against the Bears. My number 3 is Michael Crabtree, who actually has had a really good year this year. I really
Michael
cannot
Crabtree has done good.
I can't put a knock on him at all. This is a probably sit that is really probably, because he may do well, but I do not think he'll have a good game against the Seahawks D. My number 4 is Jermaine Gresham versus Pittsburgh. He's my guy that I've also been playing in my tight end carousel. And the Steelers are giving up the 5th fewest points to tight ends. So even though he's been really good and decently consistent, I would probably play Olsen above him, which is what I'm doing. And my number 5 is the 49ers D and Seattle's D. Mainly just the 49ers D, I think. Is that what I said? Yes, just the 49ers. Mainly because Seattle put up 50 points in 2 games in a row. Chicago only had 4 points against Seattle, and Arizona had a negative 1 point against Seattle. And they're both... And Seattle's just really good. Man, I just messed all this up.
Yeah, Seattle is very, very good.
Yeah, they're both allowing about 6 points to opposing defenses, and I don't think you can expect the same amount of points from either of those 2 defenses as they've had the last few weeks, because they're playing each other. So I would expect around maybe 8 or 9 points. I don't know.
Yeah, this thing is a lot of it's hard to predict. Like, I am really stoked to see this game because I think they're just... It's the 2 best defenses in the league, I think. Like, Texans are close, and the Broncos are close, and Arizona's close, but I think those 2 are on the number 1 tier. I think they're so even. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I feel like... And it's a probably sit. Like I said, if you have the 49ers D, it's really hard to sit them.
Well, that's the thing, too, is you have to think about it. Either one of the 2 teams could cause a turnover at the 5-yard line, and then they both have solid enough running backs they could find a way to score on that a couple times. And right there, that is a huge hit on your defense unless you end up actually scoring a defensive touchdown. So
yeah, it'll be a crazy game. I can't recommend sitting either of them. That was actually my hardest one. Is this? I went through everything else pretty easy, and I got to the probably sit defense. I'm like, why did I decide to do this?
Mm-hmm.
So there it is.
And there it was. All right, now we're going to move over to the top 5 games of the week. And this week, we're not really doing it by anything. We don't have a Thursday night game. We don't have a Monday night game. We do have a Saturday night game. It doesn't matter really to the playoffs that much. The Falcons are in. We know that. So we're just going to do the top 5 games that I think matters. The number 1 is the Bengals at the Steelers.
I'm going to go with the Lions on this one.
All right. Douchebag.
This is the Saturday game, right?
Yeah. No,
okay.
No, but the Bengals at the Steelers, the Steelers did shut down the Bengals last time they played, but I don't really, it's one of those things where I don't really know what to think with either one of these teams right now. The Bengals did struggle at the beginning of the game last week against the Eagles, but then they did awesome. Their defenses looked a lot better, which is my main thing because the Steelers have been struggling on offense, so I don't really know what the deal is with that, and I don't know if they'll be able to bring it back around. Both of them are fighting for their playoff lives. I don't really think the Steelers are really even in it anymore. Like I think they went out, they might be able to make it in. But
is it really that bad?
No, they're still in it, but in my head, they're not in it. You know what I mean? It's like the Rams are still in it, and I'd like to see them randomly squeak out a playoff thing, but I don't think they're in it. But basically, I think this is, and I said it before, and maybe that's why I'm sticking with it, but I think this is the year for the Bengals to be that number one team, and so I think the Bengals will win. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, they both teams have looked good and both teams have looked bad this year.
Mm-hmm.
The whole division has looked good and bad. And I'm gonna say it's an awful game and the Bengals win.
All right. And Laney Mon, what do you think?
I think it will be a close game too, but I'm going with the Bengals.
All right. So we are all going with the Bengals on that one. All right. And then the next game is the Redskins at the Eagles. And the Redskins right now are on the top of their division, which who the hell saw that coming? But they are. And that means the Cowboys and the Giants are just trying to catch up to them at this point. And the Redskins have looked good with RG3. They've looked good without RG3.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a team, if you subtract D'Angelo Hall from that, they're really maturing and they're looking solid and they're not threatening anyone. So I think the Redskins pull out a win here. But I think it's going to be a lot closer than people are thinking. I don't think the Eagles looked better than they did all year last game against the Bengals for a half. After halftime, they went back to looking like shit, but they looked good for a little bit. What do you think, Eric?
I'm going to go Redskins as well.
All right. And Lane.
Redskins going to tronkle stomp. It ain't going to be close.
All right. Redskins.
He thinks it's not going to be close. You said
it's red and green.
It's
going to be all Christmassy.
Oh, it is the Christmas game. I like that. All right, and then the third game is another playoff game, same division, and that is the Saints at the Cowboys. The Cowboys will be trying to get in. In this game, I think it's hard because the Saints could go in there and upset the Cowboys and kind of put out their playoff hopes in a lot of ways. I think they can. That division's so close that it's still going to come down to next week. But I think if they lose to the Saints, it will be hard for them to make it to the playoffs. Obviously, it's kind of an obvious it will be because it's so close. But I don't know. What do you think, Eric? What do you think the outcome to this game will be?
I don't know. I think this one is kind of Christmassy as well. Gold and silver. Those are Christmassy colors.
Oh, yeah, it is a bit Christmassy.
Like tinsel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one's going to be a tinsel game, I think.
It is.
You could wrap that around the red and green Christmas tree game. I guess Christmas trees aren't red, though. I don't know. The presents underneath it.
And I'm going to go... I like silver better than gold in life. I'm going to go with the Cowboys.
You're going to go with the Cowboys. All right. And I've liked the Cowboys the whole year. I think they've looked a lot better. But I also think the Saints' defense has kind of bounced back. And I think the Saints are going to win this and kind of be the first part of stopping the Cowboys from making it to the playoffs to keep all that Cowboys drama alive in the offseason. What do you think, Lane?
Well, if Eric's going to bring in Christmassy into this game, it's got to be the Saints.
All right. The Saints
And
will go marching in.
Anyway.
The Saints go marching in?
Yeah.
They'll go marching on his tin. Eric's silver color.
Oh. All right. And then the fourth game is the Giants at the Ravens, which this is the battle of the two teams that have been the most disappointing out of all teams in the league. Both, I think, were picked to maybe even win their whole conference, and both of them have just fallen apart. I think the Ravens are a little bit more surprising to me that they've fallen apart the way they have.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're terrible. The Giants and the Ravens. I don't even know who to pick. What do you think on this, Eric?
The weirdest thing about these two teams is either one could come out and have a just incredible game.
Have a huge one, yeah.
And either team could come out and just look horribly awful. Like, that's how these teams have been. The Giants have been that way all year. Like, they've had games where they look so good and games that they look so bad. And the Ravens, the same thing. But the Ravens has been going for a while. And so part of me wants to think it's going to continue, and part of me is like, oh, it's been going for so long. They're not as bad as they've been, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go Ravens. I'm going to throw it out there.
I'm going to go Ravens. All right.
They're not that bad.
It's the Giants at the Ravens is my thing. Like, the Ravens are pretty good at home. I want the Ravens to figure something out in the offseason, and I'm going to go over it a little bit later. I had added up the count on the games, and Eric's just a little bit ahead of me, so I need to make up some ground. So I'm going to go Giants on this one, mainly because I want to find a way for Flacco to not be playing in Baltimore, because I think they could win a Super Bowl if they had an actual quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And also I want them to really evaluate who they get for offensive coordinator. So, yeah, I'm going Giants. Eric's going Ravens. Lane is going
Giants. I think I'm with you, though. I think this is a toss-up. This is a coin flip.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
both teams have looked so
I want
bad.
both of them to win, but a tie just isn't that.
Yeah, that's both of them losing.
We've not thrown out a tie yet.
Yeah, I can't
It could
do
happen.
it. All right, and in the game most likely to tie, I feel like, because I think the teams are so evenly matched, is the 49ers at the Seahawks. This is probably not the biggest game of the week in a way, because both teams, I think, are going to make it to the playoffs at this point. But it's the biggest game because of the week in a different way, because it's for that division. If the Seahawks win this division, not win this division, but win this game, they're in a good spot to have a real shot at winning the division, mainly because the 49ers tied that one game with the Rams, and so it ends up being closer than it really is. And they're a game up right now, but that's also with that weird tie that kind of throws stuff up. And I don't know. I think it's weird because they're going into Seattle, and I think the 49ers are still the team that I think will end up in the Super Bowl. But I think the Seahawks are going to surprise them in this one. I think the Seahawks are going to come in and prove that they are not just a joke. They're not just like they shouldn't be the surprise. I think they want to prove that they're the best team in that division. So I'm taking the Seahawks. What do you think,
Wow.
Eric?
Yeah, I'm going to go tie.
You gonna go tie? Eric goes tie.
I'm not really going to go tie.
Oh,
I don't know how that
would be
works.
awesome if you got the one tie and you guessed that one right.
That would be
like
awesome.
even if you guessed every other game wrong, you'd be the best
winner.
guesser.
Yeah.
Now I want to.
That was my plan.
Maybe I'll throw a tie in next week.
All
We're
right.
going to have one more next week, right, for the last... Are
yeah.
we?
Yeah,
Super Bowl's
we're
gonna
having
tie.
a Thursday one next
We're gonna have
week.
a tie Super Bowl this year. I'm calling
Podcast,
it.
right?
Yeah, but that'll be our last one.
Well, yeah. Well, then we'll just tweet out who wins, and it'll be
Oh,
close.
yeah.
Everyone will know who wins if they pay attention, so we'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm going to go 49ers.
49ers.
I don't think Seattle can play as good as they've been playing the last 2 weeks.
My thing is mainly just that they're playing in Seattle, and I think that is a boost.
That's true.
And yeah, that's
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to go tie.
What do you think?
Switching it back
Lane?
to a tie.
This is a tough one too. I'm gonna go with 49ers though, because that's what I like to do. I like I feel like the 49ers is they're more consistent with it. They're they got the basics down, I guess, maybe.
They kick it
Whereas
with
I feel like
consistency.
the Seahawks are more they're kind of like the clutch team, which is awesome. But I feel like San Francisco is the slightly better team. But it's hard too because I feel like Seattle has the energy and the want, and like you say, they're home too. So I will not be surprised at all if I'm wrong on this one, but I'm going to go 49ers.
All right, awesome. And really quick, I'll go over right now as it sits with the games. Eric is in the lead with 47 that he's picked right, and that's through last week. Oh. I'm in second place with 45 I've picked right, and Lane is in third place with 38 that he's picked right.
Yeah, 38.
I don't think Lane can come back because he didn't.
Oh.
I don't know, but
I'm already there.
Maybe if he picks all 10 of his right, and then something crazy happens, then I think he maybe will.
I've never been wrong. Sean just switches numbers.
Oh,
I got the video to prove it.
So yeah, so that is that. And then, is there anything else you want to go over? We have one more podcast coming up.
It'll be next Thursday.
Yes.
No, I'm coming in on Christmas Eve to do a podcast. No, I'm not. That's a joke.
That doesn't sound very fun.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very fun.
So yeah, let's wrap this thing up. Put a nice bow on top of it.
Like Christmas.
But we already opened it.
Oh,
we gotta put a bow on next week's, but then it'll be late.
Yeah.
We just did bad.
Well, something.
Yeah, we'll put a nice bow on it. But we will be back Thursday a week from today. Same time. We'll be here at an hour before the game if there was a game, and we'll go over. It'll probably be a little bit different because
I think it'll be a whole different.
Yeah, we'll probably just have some
people
you should
stuff
play,
over the year. Yeah,
and then we'll go over our top 5 best calls, our top 5 worst calls. I don't know. Maybe Eric might have a special treat for us. That he's working on, and then we'll go over what we think is going to happen in the playoffs. And we'll know a lot more about the playoffs hopefully after this week.
Yeah,
and also we'll do our last picks, and we'll let you know where that stands. But yeah, so there should be a lot of stuff on it, and it will be our last one of the season. So yeah, come and join us. And we're Fantasy Top 5. You know where to find us. We go over all that at the beginning of the podcast.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm Sean.
And I'm Eric.
Peace out.
See ya.